Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm gonna give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
America is in shock as news breaks that Charlie Kirk, one of the country's most influential conservative voices, has been assassinated. The 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA was shot in the neck while speaking to a packed crowd at Utah Valley University on Wednesday afternoon. A single gunshot rang out at 12:20 p.m. local time, about 20 minutes into his speech. The manhunt for the suspected shooter is still underway, and America is grappling with the reality that political violence has reached a terrifying new level. This is the story of how one of Trump's closest allies became the latest victim of America's increasingly dangerous political climate. The conservative media star was in Utah for one of his trademark college speaking events, kind of appearance that had made him famous and controversial across America. Video of the incident shows Charlie Kirk speaking to a large outdoor crowd when a gunshot rings out. The footage is shocking. One moment Kirk is passionately addressing students about conservative values. The next moment chaos erupts as a single shot echoes across the campus. Graphic video shows he was struck before panic ripples through the large crowd in attendance, with people screaming and running for cover. Witnesses describe the horror of watching Kirk suddenly collapse mid-sentence. Students who had come to hear him speak, some to support him, others to protest, instead became witnesses to what authorities are calling a political assassination. Authorities said the weapon used has been recovered and described it as a high-powered bolt-action rifle. Utah officials say the suspected shooter was dressed in all dark clothing and fired from a long distance, potentially from a roof. This wasn't a crime of passion or a random act of violence. This was a calculated assassination attempt that succeeded in silencing one of America's most prominent conservative voices. Emergency responders rushed Kirk to the hospital, but it was too late. The Turning Point USA executive director died from his injuries, leaving behind a wife and 2 young children. Just a few weeks before Charlie died, he and his wife Erica celebrated their daughter's 3rd birthday. Kirk had been protective of his family's privacy, keeping his children's faces and names off social media. Now they would grow up without their father. The assassination of Charlie Kirk represents a terrifying escalation in America's political violence. The shooting comes as a series of events show a rising level of violence related to political dissent. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, chaos reigned on the Utah Valley University campus. Video from the scene immediately showed a man being detained by police, but authorities said he was no longer a suspect involved in the shooting. The investigation quickly became a massive multi-agency manhunt. The Utah Public Safety Commissioner says law enforcement has good video footage of the suspect, who has not yet been identified. 2 people were initially detained, but later released. We initially took in George Zinn as a suspect. He was later released and charged with obstruction by UVU police, the Utah Department of Public Safety said. A second suspect, Zachariah Qureshi, was taken into custody and released after interrogation. The FBI took over the investigation, with Director Kash Patel calling it a priority case. Authorities say they have footage of the suspect, who appears to be of college age, and a high-powered rifle has been found in woods nearby. Details of the attack are still unclear, but a large manhunt is underway for the shooter, with no one in custody as of Thursday morning. The methodical nature of the assassination suggests this wasn't a spontaneous act. The shooter had planned this attack, chosen his position carefully, and executed it with deadly precision. To understand the magnitude of this assassination, you need to understand who Charlie Kirk was and why he mattered. Kirk built his career from activist to top podcaster and ally of President Donald Trump. At just 31 years old, he had already become one of the most influential conservative voices in America. Kirk founded Turning Point USA when he was barely out of his teens, building it into a conservative powerhouse that reached millions of young Americans. He was a regular presence on cable TV where he leaned into the culture wars and heaped praise on President Trump. His Charlie Kirk Show podcast regularly topped the charts, and his campus speaking tours drew massive crowds and massive protests. Kirk thrived on controversy, never backing down from debates about immigration, social justice, or traditional values. Kirk's influence extended far beyond media. He was instrumental in Trump's appeal to young voters, organizing massive rallies and registration drives. Political analysts credit Kirk with helping shift an entire generation of college students toward conservative politics. But that influence also made him a target. Kirk regularly received death threats and required security at his speaking events. He had become the face of everything progressive activists opposed about modern conservatism. President Donald Trump confirmed the death in a Truth Social post, calling him a true patriot who died fighting for America's future. The assassination of Charlie Kirk represents a dangerous new chapter in American political violence. This wasn't just the murder of a media personality. This was the targeted assassination of a political leader whose only crime was expressing conservative views on a college campus. The shooting has sent shockwaves through the conservative movement and raised serious questions about the safety of political figures in America. If someone as prominent and well-protected as Charlie Kirk could be assassinated in broad daylight at a university event, who is safe? Campus conservative groups across the country are now questioning whether they can safely host speakers. Universities are reviewing their security protocols. The chilling effect on political speech could be enormous. Democratic and Republican leaders have condemned the assassination, but the damage to America's democratic norms may already be done. Political violence, once unthinkable in modern America, is becoming increasingly common. The manhunt for Kirk's killer continues, but the larger questions about political violence in America remain unanswered. How did we reach the point where political disagreement leads to assassination? Kirk leaves behind a wife and 2 young children who will grow up without their father. He also leaves behind millions of young conservatives who look to him as a leader and role model. His assassination marks a tragic turning point in American politics, one that threatens the very foundations of our democratic society. The investigation into Charlie Kirk's assassination continues. How can America stop the escalation of political violence? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for the latest updates on this developing story.